Would you raise your right hand? You are. Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. McGee, as I did with Deputy Superintendent Harmon, I'm giving you a stack of the evidence documents so that you can look at them as we chat, and they're all then introduced. The stipulation is the stipulation, it's not evidence. So just state your name for the records, please.
My name is John Charles McGee.
And you're familiar with the stipulation?
Yes, I am.
We don't need to go over who you are and how long and all that because it's in there. So, and you know at this last board meeting that this Board of Public Ed decided that there was substantial evidence enough to have this review and determine whether reprimands are appropriate, correct? And so that issue is not before us. We're here to talk about the plagiarism. You understand that?
Correct.
And you heard Deputy Superintendent Parman's testimony about the meeting that you had at the Office of Public Instruction in mid-April. Do you basically agree with him when he said that you made mistakes, that you explained what you did after the plagiarism came to light, what your Board of Trustees did, and the meetings that were held? Does that sound accurate to you, what he said?
Yeah, I was called up to attend a certification board hearing on April 16th, and I attended and shared my position with the certification committee at that time.
Were you given the opportunity at that hearing to present whatever you wanted to that group?
I was told that it was an informal meeting. If I wanted to, I could bring my wife to the meeting. So at that point, I had hired legal counsel due to the fact I wasn't aware of how this would all unfold or what direction it would move with regard to myself personally. I made a decision not to have my legal counsel present at that meeting because I was told it was an informal meeting. And so I went up there and told the truth, shared everything about myself and my district that I could that would help, Deputy Superintendent Parman and yourself and Elizabeth Keller, I believe it is, to, come to some kind of decision or recommendation to Denise Juneau, the Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Did your local Board of Trustees know about that meeting?
I had not informed my local board at that time. I'd spoken to the chair and explained that I had this meeting I would need to go up and attend, but I had not informed my board as a whole.
So you have the exhibits there. Let's go over them, please. Walk through them. The first, you 1 through 10 first, the articles.
Number one.
Let's jump to A, which would be under the articles. Sorry, they're not, maybe not an exact. I should put them the other way, but you're right under 10, and we start with A. You have that?
Okay.
So, and you, members of the Board of Public Ed, you all have these on your, okay, thanks. So,
Which
A.
exhibit are you looking at?
A.
A.
Mm-hmm. It's the minutes of the Florence Carlton Board of Trustees meeting from 1/23/13. Who was there, Superintendent McGee? Or maybe if you look at it, who was not there?
In attendance in this meeting.
Of the board, yeah, the Board of Trustees.
Okay, there was Trustee Mike Greger, Mel Finley, Dorothy Rhodes, and the one that was not present at that was Trustee Cornish.
Was anyone else at that meeting?
It was an evaluation meeting. It was announced and posted in the district, and I don't believe there were any other parties.
In the actual room, that was just those board members and yourself?
Correct. It was an open meeting.
So there was no public comment taken?
There was no public that I'm aware of.
So it was a closed meeting?
No, it was an open meeting. It was an open meeting, but I'm not aware of other parties being present at that meeting. At that time, I don't believe there was.
And at that meeting, what occurred?
At that meeting, it was an evaluation meeting on my performance, and the board had asked if I wanted to go into an executive session, and I so did, because that's something that normally happens.
Okay, so that, we're talking about Exhibit B there. And so once I went into evaluation, then that meeting became closed.
Correct.
And so it continued with the same 4 board members and just yourself.
Correct. The district clerk left the room at that point, which she normally does in an executive session.
Okay, so your evals Exhibit B, which looks pretty good. At the end of it, if you go to page, maybe they're not paginated, for the signature page, the very bottom, it says, let's talk about the Falcon Review article. Who filled this out? Whose comment would that be?
Which page are you talking about?
Right before the signature page, second to last page.
I am not sure who that comment is attributed to. Just so that you understand, this evaluation tool is given to the board members, and we take action usually in November to agree on what type of instrument is going to be used to evaluate the superintendent. Once the board makes that decision, the instrument is usually handed out in December to the board members, and then they're given a date of which to bring it back to the board. Once it's brought back to the board, they compile all of the comments into one form, and then they do a composite score of how each trustee has evaluated the superintendent independently, and then that is brought forward to a meeting, and this meeting happened to be on the 23rd of January.
So that comment was made by one of the board members.
One of the board members,
Do you know
and I cannot recall which one it was.
Do you know which Falcon Review article it's referring to?
I believe that it's in reference. I believe it's in reference to my reporting to the board about the Falcon Review article of that January.
And that is Exhibit 9 and 10, I believe. Confirmed the Robert Osa school safety article.
Correct.
And what was the board's response to that? When they said, let's talk about the Falcon Review article that you did, correct?
Yeah, what I've done is there was an article each month. I try to put out an article for the Falcon Review, and in the January edition there was one on school safety, and I had used Robert Voss's article that he had written out of his school district, and I knew when that article had gone out that it was not my work. It was something that needed to be brought to the attention of the board, and so I brought it to the board's attention. I contacted the chairman and the vice chairman on January 8th, and I explained to them that this is something that needed to be brought forward because I knew that they were in the midst of my evaluation, and I wanted them to be able to utilize that information about my character in their evaluation of me as their superintendent.
And so the board talked about that at the January 23rd meeting?
In executive session, there was some questioning, yes.
Were you directed to do anything at that meeting? In regards to the plagiarism?
They had directed me to write an article correction.
Exhibit C is an email from you to Robert Aboso, the author of that article on student safety. Did the board direct you to do that?
Yes, that's what I just said.
Well, I'm sorry, I thought they said to issue a correction.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. They also had instructed me to write a letter of apology.
And then Exhibit C, that 2 days later, you emailed to Dr. Boso, is that? Well,
Correct.
And in that you point out that the Falcon View ran January 3rd. Is that correct? You can read the email.
Typically we try to get it out. I believe it was January 3rd. I think January 3rd was the day that it was posted to our website. It didn't get mailed out until a couple of days later. And that had to deal with some administrative stuff that was going on with personnel in my office that were not.
It was publicly posted on January 3rd,
Right.
is that right? Okay. And then D, Exhibit D is the February 13th Falcon View. And I believe this is where you corrected, if that's the term. Would you point out where that is to the Board of Public Ed, please? On the Exhibit D.
It's on page 3.
Or do you find it there, page 3, when you read it, please, Superintendent McGee?
Yeah, I was directed by the board not to give this the front page attention to the article. I was directed to put it where it is in the Falcon View.
Would you read it?
I wrote, in the January issue of the Falcon View, the story written about school safety was not written by myself. The article was written by Robert Avosa, Superintendent of Fulton School District in Georgia. Changes were made to Mr. Avosa's article to represent the Florence Carlton School. Full credit for this story must be given to Mr. Avosa for his words.
Who's responsible for that Falcon View?
I am.
Exhibit E is an article. Your Exhibit E is an article from the Valley Republic dated February 8th. There's small paragraphs, but if you look down about the middle of the first page where it says on January 3rd, anonymous blogger posted a link to both articles on a website. And then the next paragraph, would you read that, please? Starts with McGee.
McGee subsequently reported what he done.
So when you say you self-reported on the 8th, that's not exactly accurate, is it?
No, that is accurate.
That it was already public and on this blog side by side before you went to the board?
I was not aware that it was public information before then. When I reported at the Board of Trustees, there was not any information out there that I was aware of.
Would you keep going on the article, the next page, please? There's some quotes by you. It says what happened. There was an article written. It's kind of what you just said here, that the people wanted the hot lunch schedule, so you didn't take your name off of the article, and your secretary was gone. And then the article came back, your name was still on it. And then right after that, there's a single line. Would you read that, please? It says, McGee said.
This is on page 2.
Middle of page 2.
Yeah, those aren't my words.
Could you read what it says?
It says McGee said he went to the board to report what happened after anonymous bloggers published the 2 articles side by side.
Thank you. And then the third page. The quote from you that starts with, he has not responded back. In the middle, you said, you're talking about Robert Avosa and your email to him. If you read the full article, and you said he deserved full credit for it. Is that your statement?
Or his article.
And you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
F. This is our Falcon View from March of this year. and it has your apology. Would you point out to the Board of Public Ed where that is, please?
It is on page 3.
And would you read it, please?
Okay, despite my best efforts to run the Florence Carlton School District with honesty and integrity, I must point out a mistake that has brought negative attention to the school district. Some of the articles I have written have ideas and information that are not mine. I sincerely apologize for all the pain and suffering that I have caused the district over this issue of plagiarism. I have spoken to the students, teachers, and school board and take full responsibility for my actions. At this time, it is with great resolve that I intend to learn from this mistake and dedicate myself to restore the community's trust in my office.
Now this says, and you explained already, I believe, that you did talk to your school board. Would you tell the Board of Public Ed what you did for your teachers?
Okay. What I did in this mistake, on January 8th, when I reported to the chairman of the board and the vice chairman about what had happened, it was with clarity that when the Falcon Review came back from print on January 3rd, and I looked at the front page article, I realized right then and there that this is the wrong article going out. That it was something I had done, it was on my desk, and I was utilizing the information within it to try to gather some sense of a message for our community. But it went out the way that it did, and what I had done at that point was I knew that we were getting phone calls and stuff because the public is very dependent upon this newsletter, mainly for the hot lunch calendar, more so than anything else. As much as we'd like to believe the articles we write make a difference, the reality is hot lunch calendars trump everything else. And so there was really strong urging from phone calls from community members wanting that. Administratively, I made that decision to allow the newsletter to go out, and I knew it was wrong. From that point, I went ahead and realized it grinded on me. Personally, it was grinding on me.
Let me interrupt for a second. The question was what you did for the teachers.
And so what I did was I reported to the board, and then what I did for the teachers is that I met with the teaching staff in February. This was reported to the board. The board took up the issue, and I felt like the board has an obligation to determine how this thing's going to be handled. Because I brought this on to the district as a whole, not only myself, but the district as a whole. The board met at its regular meeting in February. Up to that point, I had taken the steps that they'd asked me to take. After the February board meeting, I had a meeting with my chair and my vice chair, and I said, to a person, I have to take some steps here. I have to make apologies to the community and to the teachers and students that this has to happen. I could go into how the board managed this, and I agree with the way the board had managed this situation because of...
I believe there are board members here and they can speak for themselves.
But,
thank you.
But in regard to the staff, I met with the staff and staff meetings, and I explained my situation to them and apologized for the embarrassment and shame that I brought on to their great school and for failing in myself personally.
And in April, after this, when you met in Helena with the licensure committee, you said you met with some students' English classes. Is that accurate?
Yeah, in order to try to get the message out, I dug deep back into myself and said, who am I? At my core, I'm not a superintendent, I'm a teacher. And as a teacher, I realized, moving forward, you've got to, your character is not only defined by the mistakes you made, but your reaction to your mistakes. And as a teacher, I felt that this was a very teachable moment. as an educator, we always look for the real, meaningful, powerful points in life that we can tie into our instruction and make those connections. And I looked at it as that. And so I went into each of the English classes at the high school level so that all the high school students that were in attendance could hear a lesson on plagiarism. You could have a real and meaningful example of what not to do and the consequences professionally and personally. It was a difficult lesson for me because I knew I was going to be in one of the rooms was going to be my son. So, but I did do that, and I'm proud of doing that because that, was something that had to happen.
Did you apologize to the student body as a whole or just the high school English classes?
Each of the high school English classes that would have incorporated all of the high school students
And that, go ahead, sorry.
that were in English.
That were in English.
We have a 4-year requirement for English, so most of those.
And the public apology was what you just read from the Falcon View from March.
Community, correct.
Community, correct, okay. Let's look at G, please. G are the minutes from a special meeting of the Board of Trustees from the Florence Carlton School District, March 18th. Was this an open meeting of the board?
Correct.
And if it's a special meeting, was it to deal with this issue of plagiarism?
Correct.
What happened at that meeting?
At that meeting, there was a motion for termination put on the table, and that motion was voted down 4-1.
So the board considered terminating your employment with the district?
Correct, and it was a meeting that was held in the gymnasium of the school that allowed, I can't recall the amount of time, but there was a considerable amount of time that allowed people from the community to step up to the microphone and to, share their feelings about, this issue with the board before he took his action, compensation benefit.
And then under qualification and appointment, qualification appointment, what does the first line say?
Must be of good character and of unquestionable morals and integrity.
Do you think that applies to you
In what regard?
as a superintendent of the Florence Carlton School District?
Oh, yes, it does apply to me.
I would move the admission of Exhibit 11, which is Florence Carlton School District Policy Number 6110.
Any objection?
Well, that's the relevance of the policy. If this is a state licensing issue, local policy may not be relevant. The board, as the exhibits show, determined that policy 165-223 is violated. So I will object on the grounds of relevance to this query.
And what do you have to say about that?
Oh, well, I believe it is relevant as superintendent to look at what their board has decided as part of what we're doing. What did they do? What did they decide? What was the basis of their decision? So just the other policies of the district that may be relevant here.
I guess I recommend to the board that it be admitted, but with sort of a restrictive view of it as being not as relevant as the inquiry here, which is the statewide analysis and investigation.
Yeah, I would agree. It's not to be reprimanded for violation of this policy. It's informative of what the district did in this matter.
Okay. And can we take a short break right now? Yes.
Ruling in the month of February about other instances that existed.
Before you ran the correction or after you ran the correction?
After I ran the article correction on Robert Ebolso.
Okay. So after that correction ran in February, Falcon View, 4 other instances of plagiarism came to light. Is that correct?
Correct. The board had asked if there were any other concerns or issues that might exist, and I said that I would look back and see, and I reported to the board that there were.
Okay, so just look at the article from the 210 Falcon. It's called Teen Friends, which corresponds to Dangerous Liaisons, Teen Friends by Joan Burgee, which is Exhibit 2. Did you report this plagiarism to the board before it became public?
I reported it to the board in early February.
Specifically or generally?
Generally, not specific.
In the quote in the Valley Republic article that we looked at, and you read, you said that Robert also deserved full credit for it. Did Joan Bird, is that how you say her last name, did she deserve full credit for her article?
I have not done an article correction on that article.
Have you apologized to her?
No, I have not.
What about the 1211 Falcon View, high school athletes successful after graduation is yours, where high school sports paved the way to successful careers by Shane Monahan?
The only article that I have done so with is the Robert Avoso article.
So you didn't do it for the letter of class to 2012 that was in the 612 Falcon View, it was Jamie Downey's letter to high school graduates?
Yeah, I believe I answered that question.
Is that on that one, in that Falcon View from letter, or with a letter of class to 2012, it was June of 12, there's a picture on there, is that your daughter?
Yes, it is.
Okay. No further questions at this time.
Cross? You want to make this cross and direct to speed the process up?
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay. We'll start with cross.
Express to the board that there was a problem here.
Specifically, who did you talk to?
I spoke to my chairman, Pat Appleby, and my vice chairman, Mike Greger.
What was their reaction?
Ms. Appleby had stated, okay, I'm aware of this, let's bring that up in your evaluation meeting on January 23rd.
Was that evaluation meeting already scheduled?
Yes, it was.
Speaking of the evaluation, you were directed to look at the second to last page of the evaluation and identified a series of statements, one of which was, well, let's talk about the Falcon View article. What did you say to the board in that closed session?
Well, I explained to the board that the Robert Avoso article had gone out and that it was not correct the mistake that was made. At that point in time, the discussion turned towards how do we handle this issue. One of the things that the board was dealing with in that evaluation was some real strong issues by a few individuals in our community that would take full advantage of this mistake and use it to their advantage any way they could. And the board was cognizant of that, and they were concerned about that. So they directed me to write an article correction and place it not on the front page, but inside the pages of the newsletter. We talked about, should I be doing apologies and stuff, and they said, let's see what the public's reaction to this is going to be.
I think that's all the cross I have.
Okay.
Start over then. Okay. The board has the stipulated facts, which you've seen earlier, correct?
Correct.
Let's go back and kind of fill in some of the blanks. You really haven't had an opportunity to introduce yourself to the board. Why don't you do that?
It was on the heels of the school shootings, and it really just struck me as you got to be thinking about what you're doing here. And as I looked at it from a different lens than just trying to get information out in news articles, I realized there's a problem here, and I reported it to the Board of Trustees. Now, at that point, when we went into the evaluation, when I did report it to the chair and vice chair, and before the evaluation meeting, it was my intent to give the board the opportunity to add that component into my evaluation and decide how they wanted to treat it, because they still had at that point in time, before February 1st, a decision that they could have made with regard to me. And that decision was, they could have said, we no longer want your services because you're in the last year of your contract. And I did not want to be the superintendent by default. I wanted the board to be fully aware as to what was going on with regard to myself. They'd asked, are there any other articles that exist? And I said, I will have to look back and review my work, my body of work, to see if I can find those. And I came back and reported that yes, there are others that existed. My intent was not to take somebody else's words, but I was trying to get what I considered good information out to our school parents, and so that's what happened.
Okay. So, going forward, we see in the record.
I explained forever, I'll wear this cloak of shame. But I also wanted students to learn that within any mistake, character is developed by how you handle your mistakes. How do you come out of that mistake? And so I explained to them, you know, it's not easy to stand up in front of people and admit your failures, to do it several times over to individual classes that took me over a week to do. But it was important that that was done. And I was hopeful that that real meaningful lesson would touch the lives of those students and help them to learn. On the professional side, I explained I'm going to accept the consequences that come my way. I'm not going to run from my responsibilities here. I will accept the consequences. I had stated to the certification committee that I would like for it to be handled through OPI, if at all possible, because of the issues that exist within my school district. We have a small contingent of people that would love to turn it into a Hatfield and McCoy world. I would love to use this as a battering ram against my position, and especially against the Board of Trustees, because the Board of Trustees did nothing wrong there. They had a very serious issue before them, and they dealt with it in response as a local control issue. They believed that they gave a lot of latitude to the people who came to the meetings and held the board meetings in the gymnasium, that they would be able to hear from their constituents and make that decision as to how to manage this. And my big fear, and I shared this with the certification committee, was that it would become the gotcha moment. See, you didn't do enough. And so I was very concerned with that as I met with the certification committee, and I was so much concerned with it that after the board meeting in July, I contacted Catherine Orr personally. Jeff didn't know I contacted her, and I asked, is there any way we can handle this? Because I do not want a media cycle surrounding my school district again negatively. I've done enough. And I felt like I'm put it out there again, and I guess that's the reality of what I've done. So, I'm sorry to you.
talking about part of the personal consequences, and you were suspended without pay.
Personal cost. Excuse me.
Would a letter of reprimand from the Board of Public Ed make this more meaningful to you?
Really wouldn't.
I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but Superintendent McGee, Exhibit E is the Valley Republic article, and I'm wondering if you're contesting the truth of that article. The blogger posted your article on school safety side by side with Robert Voss's article that he wrote
I was not
on that
aware
date.
of that.
Are you contesting that happened on January 3rd?
I'm not aware that it did happen on January 3rd.
So you're not contesting the truth of that
It
article?
could be truthful, but I was not aware.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. You're excused for now. How many more witnesses do council have? Mr. McGee has 2 and OPR. Okay, great. So we'll proceed to Mr. McGee's case.
McGee calls Vicki Cornish, please. Vicki, I think Captain can swear you
I
in.
have to swear you in. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
Vicki, could you please introduce yourself to the board?
I'd be glad to. I'm Vicki Cornish. I currently serve as a trustee on the school board in Florence. I have served 11 plus years on the school board, 7 of those as the chairman. I'm not currently the chairman, but and our chairman wanted me to relay this to you, that she would have been here, except that she had a previous business commitment that she could not get out of. So the board has elected me to speak on their behalf. I've lived in the community of Florence for 40 years. I graduated from Western Montana with a teaching degree, taught in the public school system for 4 years. My husband and I have